Hey, what's up everyone, welcome back to Zevox. So today we're going to be going through the top 10 guns in Warzone within the new Season 4 update. Now before we do get into this list, I just want to say quickly, bear in mind, something like this can be very subjective, so you may or may not agree with my list, but this is my personal list of the best guns within Season 4. So without further ado, let's get into the list. So this one is definitely a bit unorthodox, but I actually think that the FAL is somewhat underrated. Now don't get me wrong, I wouldn't typically run with this gun, which is why I'm ranking it at number 10 rather than higher up on the list. But this thing is actually a pretty decent gun in Warzone. Obviously the main downside is that this is a semi-auto AR, so it will naturally be a bit more difficult to use, but the range and the damage makes it a viable choice if you want to try something a bit different in Warzone. My attachment recommendation for this gun is as follows: monolithic suppressor with a marksman barrel, commando foregrip, 24 round mags and a stippled grip tape. This quite drastically improves the already decent accuracy and range while sacrificing only a little bit of mobility. Again, not my number one gun and I typically wouldn't run with this, but give it a go. It's made it into my top 10 list for a reason. So at number 9 we have our first Season 4 gun in this list, which is the Fennec. Now I must admit, since Season 4 came out I've been almost exclusively using the Fennec as far as SMGs go. I mean, it's just so much fun to use due to the insane fire rate. However, despite how fun this gun is to use, I'd struggle to rank it too high up in this list due to the fact that at mid to far range distances it becomes almost completely useless. With that being said, for very close range gunfights, this is probably the best SMG in the game. It absolutely shreds enemies up close. My attachment recommendation for this gun is as follows: ZLR 18 deadfall barrel, the Forge Tac CQS, the stippled grip tape, the 40 round mags and the Merc foregrip. This will help suit this gun even more to that close range combat I talked about by improving hipfire accuracy and sprint to fire speed quite drastically. But the barrel will also help improve our range and velocity, which might make it somewhat more useful at mid-range distances. However, I still wouldn't recommend risking it too much, so definitely stick with close range gunfights when using this gun. If you try using it at any longer distances, you're likely going to get outgunned. So this one might catch some of you off guard, but if you think about it, it makes absolute sense to include the RPG in a top Warzone guns list. This gun is a bit of a funny one because it's very underrated by some players who don't even consider running with it, but on the other hand it's very overrated by others who seem to always be running with it like it's some sort of godsend. Overall, it's obviously got very limited use, and that is mainly going to be for destroying vehicles. If you're playing quads, I think it's definitely worth having one teammate with an RPG at all times. It can just be such an easy way to kill 4 people in a vehicle with one shot. Definitely not a gun I'd recommend running solo though, and in quads there's really no point in having more than one teammate with this thing. Okay, at number 7 we have our brand new Season 4 gun in the CR56, aka the Galil. Now this gun is still pretty new and I guess we don't fully know where it stands just yet, but from first impressions it definitely looks like a very decent AR. It has good stats overall and actually has pretty impressive damage. However, the reason it's only coming in at number 7 is that there are still simply better assault rifles out there in my opinion, which I'll get to later. My attachment recommendation for this gun is a monolithic suppressor, the Zodiac barrel, the mini reflex, the commando foregrip and the 45 round mags. This will greatly improve our accuracy, range and control while sacrificing only a little bit of mobility. Alright, at number 6 we have our second SMG in this list, which is the MP7. There isn't too much to say about this SMG, it's a decent gun and it definitely performs pretty well at close to medium range gunfights. However, I'd definitely say it lacks at further ranges. Not a bad gun, but nothing spectacular either. My attachment recommendation for this gun is a monolithic suppressor, the SSS Recon, the Merc foregrip, 50 round mags and sleight of hand. You could also go with 60 round mags if you want to, but I think given the nature of the MP7, it's not worth sacrificing too much mobility, as that can definitely be a big disadvantage in close range gunfights, which is what you're going to be getting into with this one. And if ammo becomes a problem, the sleight of hand perk should be able to save you anyway. So coming in at number 5 overall, we have what I think is the best sniper in Warzone, which is the HDR. Now this one might be a bit controversial, since I'm sure there's some players out there who think that a sniper is the number 1 best gun overall to use in Warzone. But personally, I just don't think it makes sense to put a sniper any higher on this list, since obviously snipers have very limited use. This gun is great at picking up enemies far away, with it being a one-shot headshot at any distance. It also has the fastest bullet speed of any sniper in Warzone, meaning you're less likely to miss if your opponent moves between the time you shoot and the time the bullet gets to your enemy. But other than far range gunfights, the sniper is almost completely useless in Warzone, which is why I found it difficult to place a sniper any higher on this list. But as far as snipers go, the HDR is definitely the one to go with. That has been the case since the release of Warzone, and it hasn't changed in Season 4. It's still the top sniper to go with, and it doesn't disappoint. I would also like to add that with a sniper, I'd definitely recommend running some sort of SMG or AR as your secondary gun. The sniper obviously won't be viable for anything other than long range gunfights, as I mentioned earlier. My attachment recommendation for this one will be a monolithic suppressor, 26.9 barrel, tac laser, F-tac stock and focus perk. This improves on pretty much everything, but especially aim down sight speed, which will be very useful when running with a sniper, as you definitely want your crosshairs on your enemies as quickly as possible. So coming in at number 4 overall, we have our number 1 SMG, which is the MP5. Now I must be honest, since the Fennec came out, I haven't been using the MP5 quite as much, as I just find the Fennec so satisfying to use. But I'd still say that objectively speaking, the MP5 is the most versatile SMG. Despite not having such a great fire rate like the Fennec, I'd still say that for Warzone the MP5 is the most effective SMG. It has a lower recoil and much further damage range compared to the Fennec. This means that the MP5 is effective not only for close range gunfights but also mid-range ones. My attachment recommendation for this gun would be a monolithic suppressor, a collapsible stock, the Merc foregrip, 45 round mags and sleight of hand. This slightly improves upon pretty much every stat on this gun, apart from the control, which you will be sacrificing but only by a tiny bit. So at number 3 we've got the Grau. This is a great assault rifle in Warzone, and it especially works the best at mid to long range distances. Up close, the damage of the Grau lacks a bit, and that's why this gun isn't higher up on the list. But it's definitely a great gun regardless, and it makes sense to run with this one in Warzone, as at the end of the day, a lot of your gunfights will be at mid to long range distances within this game mode. One of the best things about the Grau, in my opinion, is the default iron sight that comes with this gun. It looks very clean, and therefore you don't need to go with any optic, allowing you an extra attachment slot that you normally wouldn't get with the other guns, where I typically recommend using some sort of optic. My attachment recommendation for this gun is as follows: a monolithic suppressor, the Archangel barrel, the Commando foregrip, the 60 round mags and the Sniper Elite rear grip. While this does sacrifice mobility a fair bit, it creates an absolute beast of a gun for mid to far range gunfights, with greatly improved accuracy, range and control. So this one might surprise some of you coming in at number 2, but I genuinely believe that an LMG loadout can be so powerful and effective in Warzone. I would typically never run an LMG loadout in multiplayer, but Warzone is a completely different type of playstyle. LMGs are absolutely devastating at mid to far range gunfights in this game. The main downside to running an LMG loadout is the disadvantage you're going to have at close range gunfights. The aim down sight speed is pretty slow on this thing, and that means it's not a viable gun when dealing with enemies up close. For this reason, I would probably suggest running the overkill perk and getting an SMG, like the ones mentioned earlier in this video, perhaps an MP5 or a Fennec as your secondary gun. In fact, personally, I've been enjoying running an LMG plus Fennec setup since Season 4 came out. This will create a beast of a loadout and ensure you can shred your enemies up close and far away. Of course, you will be having to sacrifice Ghost if you're going to run overkill, which is definitely a big downside, but you could always pick a second loadout later in the game to get your Ghost perk and keep the LMG and SMG combo from your first loadout. My attachment recommendation for this gun would be a monolithic suppressor, a 25.9 heavy barrel, a commando foregrip, a 200 round belt and a pro optic. This creates an absolutely devastating weapon from mid to far range distances, allowing you to shred enemies far away with great accuracy and range. And thanks to the 200 round belt, it's safe to say that you won't have to worry about reloading. The aim down sight is of course very slow and the gun has low mobility, but that doesn't matter as this isn't a close range gun anyway. So I left this gun for last, as personally I truly believe the MP4 to be the best gun overall in Warzone. This gun has consistently been one of the most powerful guns in Warzone since the release of the game mode, and definitely the most versatile. What I mean by that is that this gun works in almost any type of encounter in Warzone. If you are up against enemies nearby, it deals great damage at a decent fire rate, but even at mid to far range distances this gun can work very well depending on what kind of optic you put on it, thanks to its great accuracy and stability. Overall, this gun hasn't disappointed me every time I ran a game with it, and it's just one of those guns that will work very well in all situations. I will say that at far range gunfights, the Grau is somewhat superior, but overall I'd still personally put the M4 above it simply due to the versatility of being able to engage in close range gunfights more effectively than you would with the Grau. My attachment recommendation for this gun would be a monolithic suppressor, a stock M16 barrel, a GI mini reflex, a commando foregrip and 60 round mags. This sacrifices mobility a bit but greatly improves accuracy, range and control, just like with the Grau loadout I mentioned earlier. So there we have it, that's the top 10 guns in Season 4 of Warzone. Let me know what changes you would make to this list and whether or not you agree with my list. But if you found this helpful, do leave a like on it and subscribe to my channel for more Call of Duty content, and I'll see you in my next video.